Well, today we're going to have a little bit of a provocative conversation. I'm Ophelia, the Mystic Muse. There are 4 topics that every circumstance, every event, every action, relationship, job, everything falls into 4 categories. And these 4 categories can bring peace or can bring war. They can send people into shock, send blood pressure high, sky high, in the manner that we have been shown, that they have been instilled into us for such a long, long, long time. Can you have any idea of what these 4 topics might be? I'll tell you. Money, power, sex, and death. Obviously, the example I'm going to give you is based on the English language. And as my French is pretty rusty now, and also my Norwegian from many years ago, I could not go and do the same things with the words that equal those in another language. But I would be very curious for a multi-language person to take those 4 words in their own language and follow my example and see what you get out of this example by the time you've finished hearing about it. I would be very, very curious to hear. But back to the topic at hand in English. These 4 topics run everything. Some things are just one section of it, but the vast majority of the time, you can weave all 4 words into any and every circumstance, in every part of life. This particular podcast, I would like to give you a new perspective, a perspective of words that can take your mind, your heart, and your energetic being and frequency to a new perspective level, to perhaps shed some of the fears and the angst that those 4 words bring out of people. How this all came about was back in 2010, I think it was. I was, at the guidance of that which is far higher than I was put up on Mount Shasta at about 7,000 feet, which I thought was only for a couple of days. It turned out to be 7 weeks. And during that time, I was given rather clear instructions internally and then manifested them externally, is that I was to review my life in the presence of the silence and the land and the beauty and the visits from some of the interesting critters, like a bear and some young buck. I was to go within and look back from the moment I was then, but go back in time and see the timeline of events that were significant in my life. And I was to write them down. And so I did. It took days. And as I was going backwards and backwards, I started, that brought up all sorts of emotions. Joy and laughter, and remembering of magical times. And also tears and anger and pain and hurt at other times. And how I was raised and what I was learned and what my benefits were and what the gifts were and also what was missing. And so I went back and back and back and back. And even at certain times I was prompted into another lifetime to see a different way and traits that I brought forth into this lifetime. And I was here to hone and perhaps try and embody and re-energize and make a different choice in this lifetime based on what I did the previous one. So as I was going back, the first word that came to me was the money. Very, very fortunate as a young child, growing up, to travel a huge amount. And then I got to when I was 19. And my parents, because my father loved the south of France, he decided to take the family and live in Monaco and on the Côte d'Azur. And so they'd planned 6 months, rented the house, packed up, and that was what they were going to do. And at the time I was in a small ballet company out of Sydney, and I was traveling with this little troupe. 6 months came and they never came back. Decided to stay longer, put the children in school in Monaco, and that was it. And I was still in Sydney, and I was like, why? Am I crazy? Why would I stay in Sydney to not go over there? So I saved my pennies and did my work and everything. And then I was 19, and I left Sydney with 2 suitcases. Little did I know how significant those 2 suitcases would become in my life. And yes, indeed, I did live in France, in Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat and Monaco for 18 months overall. Then, after the 18 months, my friend Tora from Norway invited me to go to Norway, to Oslo, for Christmas, because she knew I had never had a white Christmas. I grew up in Australia, and a Christmas in Australia is the height of summer. And so I agreed. It's like, yes. So me and my 2 suitcases began a journey of a year in Oslo, continued into Vienna for another year, and then into London for a couple of years. I applied to British Airways, well, it was BOAC at the time, and I was accepted to be a stewardess on international routes based out of London. So I traveled the world on the great jumbo jets, 747s, which were only 5 years old at that point in time. And amazing, amazing. And once again, I'm always traveling with just a couple of suitcases. This signature, over time, has been the markings for beginnings and endings in my life. It's not the big houses and taking the possessions. My divorce ended and I said, no, you keep it all. I will take what I need. And it was basically suitcases of my treasures. And then I started again in another place with 2 suitcases. Same thing. And this has gone on until this present time. What does it have to do with money? During these times, I was being shown on how to literally let go of a whole lot of things. 23 years of life, actually. Keep only the possessions that were so important. And the exercise that I was given was, you can take what will fit into 1 suitcase. It might be an ever-expanding suitcase, but you take what is crucially important to you, that you don't think you can live without. And and you can put that suitcase in storage. The other suitcase you can take with you. And that's not ever-expanding. That is one size, and you are to take what is vitally important to you, what you find to be very, very treasured that you will take on your journey. One suitcase. This is a very powerful exercise to really go into what you think is important and of value and what is not. And the reason why it became so such an example is because I was sending some things back to Australia. And when you send things shipwise, you pay for weight and volume. And even a piece of paper has $1 a figure on it, I learned. So you start to really hone down on what is important. And after many, many tears and much, much angst, I got it down to 12 small boxes that got shipped back. And on the plane I left with 2 suitcases and a laptop computer. When I was going back up at the mountain and reviewing all of this, the words came to me, look at this as an anagram. It's like, what are you talking about? An anagram for money? And it's like, yes. Find an anagram for the money that speaks to you, that expresses the relationship that you have or you would like to have with money and what it means in a bigger picture. And so I started putting the letters down. M-O-N-E-Y. Money. What does it mean? And refining, and eventually the aha moment. Material obsession or obligations. Neutralize evolving yourself. And I just sat there and looked at the words on the paper. Oh my God, that is exactly true. When we become so obsessed by the money, the dollars, whatever the currency is, by what it can bring us, what we can get from it, who we can take it from, who we can give it to, it takes on a life of its own. And not always, more often than not, it's negative. And then when we have debt of all sorts, the obligation neutralizes us being free and able to do what we choose or what we would like to do to fulfill a passion. Because this over our heads is sitting this obligation to pay back. And in most cases, it is credit card or manufactured money, perception. Because in reality, when you know the understanding of the money and the credit, the money doesn't exist until you choose to make it exist on a purchase. That's when it becomes, per se, an intangible tangible. And that is when you begin to make tangible interest payments on top of paying that money back to the credit card company. So what began as illusion now becomes manifest as you are paying it back. Whoa! And this is where the light bulb started going off. And I started looking at everything about money. And I'm going, oh my gosh, we have been so deluded and so brainwashed with the first emotional feeling to the word money. But now, if you take